Hey, listeners, before we get started today, I want to give a quick shout out and word to our sponsor, our very first sponsor, Rapido Solutions Group. Danny Frisco and Roberto Icaza, two longtime friends of mine, guys I've known for 10 plus years, the CEO and COO respectively, and co-founders of Rapido Solutions Group. These guys know what they're doing. I'm excited to be partnered with them to give you a little glimpse into their business. Rapido connects logistics and supply chain organizations in North America with the best nearshore talent to scale efficiently, operate on par with U.S.-based teams, and deliver superior customer service. These guys work with businesses from all sides of the industry, 3PLs, carriers, logistics, software companies, whatever it may be. They'll build out a team and support whatever roles you need, whether it's customer, carrier sales support, back office, or tech services. These guys know logistics. They know people. It's what sets them apart in this industry. They're driven by an inside knowledge of how to recruit, hire, and train within the industry, and a passion to build better solutions for success. In the current market conditions where everyone is trying to be more efficient, do more with less, nearshoring is the latest and greatest tactic that companies are deploying to do so, and Rapido is a tremendous solution for you. So check them out at gorapido.com. And thank you again for being a sponsor to our show, a great partner. We look forward to working with you. And to our listeners, that's it. Let's get the show on the road. Welcome back to another episode of the Freight Pod. I'm your host, Andrew Silver. I am joined today by an awesome guest, someone who I've gotten to know just a little bit. We spent an hour meeting each other at Soho House in Chicago. We had a drink, and I got to learn a little bit about your business. That was, earlier this summer, was that, Jonathan?
Yeah, it's already a few months. Time flies.
Yeah. Well, I think you had just done your deal with NFI at that point, and a lot of interesting stuff. I mean, you have such an interesting business with a long history in the space. And so I'm excited to dive into that today. My guest is Jonathan Salama. Did I say your last name right?
Yeah, nailed it.
French origins, is that true?
Yep, born and raised.
Yep, awesome. We're going to dive into that a little bit. So he is the CEO, co-founder of Transfix, was previously CTO and made the move to CEO, which is another topic we'll dive into. But let's start with your origins. So,
Sure.
A Frenchie, what was it like growing up in Paris, France? Did you have plans to one day make the move to the States and become a freight broker, or you just kind of stumbled on that journey?
No, like right in high school in France, I thought, let's go. Freight broker in the US. It's going to work. No, the story is I make harsh and quick decisions. And I had the opportunity to study at University of Miami in Florida out of high school. Well, why not? Let's go. Studied there for computer engineering. And I thought, I'll do a quick internship in the US, and then I'll move back to France. And I had one at Microsoft that didn't work out for me. I moved to Seattle from Miami, so I went from sunny every day to rainy every day. I just didn't like it there. So I moved to New York. 3 months in, I'll find something else. I'll work for 1 year. I'll move back to Paris, and I'll leave my life, and I'll be happy ever after. And 2 or 3 months on the job, I met. I worked with this lady that is now my wife, and she is from Wisconsin. There were no convincing her to move to France with me. So that was that. I have been here ever since. Never looked back. But that was a deal. It was another startup in New York. Tons of fun. And now I'm here.
Harsh and fast decisions. I'm the same way. When I was 25, I was asked if I'd be interested in moving to Denver because Coyote wanted to open an office in Denver. And I said yes while in the room because why not? And quitting Coyote to want to start MoLo was also a decision I made in less than 24 hours. And I had spent 10 years working there. And I'm curious, how, if we were to zoom out a little bit and look at our lives and look at, running a business, in some cases I could see harsh and fast decisions being a benefit and in others being a challenge. Can you think of kind of an example where it's been one or the other, where a harsh and fast decision has been productive or been a challenge?
There's so many, but I think like there's this, I think you hear a lot from people like, oh, you have to gather all the data, I made data-driven decision. And sometimes they're just not there and you've got to make a call. And if you spend 1 week to make that decision, it's a lot worse than in my mind, making the wrong decision. I love this concept from Amazon, the one-way door versus a two-way door. And so,
I don't know that. Explain that to me.
The concept is that, so if it's a one-way door decision, you can roll it back. Simple example:
quitting your job.
You decide quitting your job, right? Like you can roll it back. But I don't know. It's starting to interview at other jobs. You don't have to like bring it back, right? So there's the concept of one way and two ways, and if it's two-way door, I go really really fast towards that decision. If it's a one-way door, it depends. Sometimes when I proposed to my wife 3 months into a relationship.
Really? That's quick. You knew.
When you know. She's got, if you ask anybody, she got the short end of the stick. It is what it is. But
I doubt that.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's when it's helpful. It's when you can be unlocked and move quickly. I think it could also bite you, but I can't think of an example where I regretted a decision because I made it too fast.
Yeah,
I can't think of one.
Okay. Well, I like that notion as I thought about the two-way door, just in terms of trying new things. Like, I don't know, I'm in a place in my life where I'm experimenting a lot, and I used to be afraid to try new things. I don't know why. I don't know if it's that kind of imposter syndrome or just thinking you won't be good or thinking I wouldn't be good or whatever it may be. But I've reached the point in the last 6 to 12 months where it's like I just want to keep trying new things and testing things out. Even something like ChatGPT was something that I was like leery of messing around with at first.
Oh, wow.
And now all of a sudden I'm using it all the time. Like even this morning I was in the gym and I was talking to my trainer about my diet, which I have not gotten to a good place yet. And he was like, wait, he's like, what are you eating in the morning? And I said, well, I'll eat, 4 eggs with cottage cheese mixed in with it sometimes, and a yogurt with protein and a protein shake. And he's like, that's way too much protein at one time. Your body can't process it that quickly. And I was like, yeah, see, this is the thing. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do it. He's like, just go on GPT, explain your weight, your height, what's going on. And like, it'll tell you everything. And I did. And all of a sudden I have this plan. So I don't know. I just leaning in and just, if it's, I like the idea that in a two-way door where there's no risk to testing something out, just do it and see what comes out of that. So
yeah.
Speaking of just doing it, you're an entrepreneur and the CEO of Transfix. So take me back to the origin of Transfix and like, how did the idea come to be? And how did you get yourself involved in that?
Yeah. And that we'll roll back to the subject of like fast decision, because that was also a really, really fast decision, but
good,
so
as it should be.
I was, I was at this startup in New York where I met my wife, and we both decided we wanted to try out the San Francisco, Silicon Valley area. So we moved to San Francisco, and I joined another startup, and that startup didn't work. It didn't work I was there for 1 year, basically the only engineers, or there were a couple others there. And a year in, the company shut down. And one thing that I don't blame anybody for that shutdown, but one thing that I was frustrated about is that as an engineer, I had no voice. It's a company of 4. It was a company of 4 or 5 people. We're not talking about like hundreds of people, right? And like, okay, fine, I'm one of 50 engineers. And I had no voice. And so I came out of it like, the next thing I do is I start my own startup. I don't know what it is. I don't know what I'm going to do, but that's the next thing I do. This is one of the reasons my wife is a wonderful person, because she had to support me while I was doing this. Is I stopped making, I stopped having a salary. I just went in and started studying different startup ideas, different things. But I was coming up blanks. I didn't have anything. And I was pitching this friend that was all these crazy. He was teaching me a lot. There were like some ideas were like great idea, but like, what's the TAM here? Like, if you succeed and capture 100% of the market, maybe $1 million. Like, what do you have? So starting
Not
to
enough.
learn, like, all right, these are the things I'm looking for. I'm looking for a massive TAM. I'm looking for an expert in the field who can catch me up, because I know engineering, but that's about it. And at least at the time. And I want a undisrupted space. So I had these 3 criteria built up. And one day, one of my friends, I listen, you've got this concept and all this stuff, but you don't have an idea. And I have this friend who's the opposite. He doesn't know how to get it started, but he has this idea for a trucking company. You should listen to him. So Drew, my co-founder, drove to Brooklyn. That's where we were. He drove like from, I don't know, somewhere in New Jersey. We met at a bar. We had a few beers, and that night it was like, great. So we're starting this. It's happening. We didn't leave the bar. That we shook hands like 50-50. Let's go. We've never met before. So, but I fell in love with the concept, which back then was just, you've got this massive space that everyone depends on. Absolutely everybody depends on. That first startup I keep mentioning to was a fashion company. We were selling handbags, and site goes down. It's very hard to feel passionate about, oh no, we're not going to be able to sell those handbags. Like, it's very hard. But for in this space, a truck driver doesn't get his shipments. A shipper gets his delivery late. Like that, there's real world impact to getting this stuff wrong. So it fell in love with the space, fell in love with the concept of this. Like, we started, I'm going to go on record that we were the first one to do this, right? It was 2013. And all I thought back then, like, wait a minute, like, if we can track the trucks with their phone, that's already tech that doesn't exist in this space. Like, this is great. Let's go.
How did you learn about this? Like, how did you know that? How did you know that people didn't have an ability to track on the phones? Like, I mean, I assume you knew nothing.
Yeah.
And I think Drew, what was Drew's background as well?
So Drew is from the industry. Drew's father, so if I get the story right, Drew's father had a trucking company that he pivoted into a brokerage back in the late 80s. So Drew grew up with his father company having a brokerage. And his story is different, in which he went to school. He went to Georgetown, did his 4-year, and came back and thought, wait a minute, somebody is going to disrupt the brokerage space. I need to help my family invest into the business, and essentially pivoted to not be just full truckload brokerage, because he was worried somebody was going to disrupt the space and put them out of business. So he pivoted his company's business, and then by the time he was done, realized, wait, nobody's doing this. So I'm going to go do it. And that's when we met.
And he said to you,
yeah, go ahead.
So how did he describe to you the problem he wanted to solve? Because you were going to be the guy who was going to actually build the solution, but what was the actual problem?
The thesis back then was the back office at a brokerage, and this was funny because it hasn't changed that much. But the thesis back then was the back office of a brokerage takes a considerable amount out of money out of the transaction, meaning that you're scrapping to get your 20% margin or 15%. Back then it was like the math was different than today, obviously, but you're scratching to get like your 15-20% margin, and then once you get your margin, 80% goes away from like your cost. And there has to be a way to automate this. And we dig deeper, and we talked about scheduling, and we talked about this concept to just accept a shipment. There are so many rules from shippers sending shipments to broker, and you have the ability to accept them or reject them based on very specific rule the shipper has. And accepting the right freight and rejecting the wrong freight has consequences. So people take their time and do it. And like, wait, like we can build rule engine for this. We can do this. We can like, there are ways to do it. And so we did. All these solutions were, I don't want to call it obvious, but they were pieces of technology that already existed and just had to be put together to offer this solution.
Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. And when did you first, like, how did you go to market? So it was you and Drew. Did you guys raise money first on the idea and then, go hire a bunch of people, or
No.
was it bootstrap? What was?
Neither. So it's bootstrap for about a year. Our thesis was, this is trucking. It's going to be hard to get like investors to care about this until we show traction. We didn't have a product, we didn't have everything. So our split in responsibilities was easy. Drew, you go sell, you're out. I'll build everything.
And you were when you were building, your thought was to build the automation functions, or you were building a TMS. What were you building at first?
Yeah, I was going to build like I didn't even know it was called a TMS at the time, but like I was going to build my version of what I need to operate the freight. And then Drew, before we got started, before anything, the very next week closed Barnes and Noble. Who's like, great, no, we have no tech. We get you're the first one. You get everything. We're gonna send you 10 loads a week. Figure it out. So while coding, I was actually covering freight as well, which gave me a great, really great deal of learning on like how to work with truck drivers, how to book a load, how to schedule a load. So I had all this like crash course of how to do things while building the platform, which is why it probably has like some like design. In the early days, there were some design flaws because they're like, oh wait, that's how the carrier reacts, so they must all react this way. So we'll build it that way, and then oh no, they don't.
Yeah, because that's the interesting thing is you kind of simplified how obvious it seemed to automate as much of this as possible. And I think an overarching lesson that a lot of companies have learned that have been down the automation path is there's a lot you can automate, but there's a lot that you need a human backstop to support in order to ensure fluidity and ensure execution. And it has frankly led to, in my opinion, the demise of a number of companies. But I will say it's an underrated, valuable concept that founders and CTOs and engineers and anyone who's coming into these businesses should spend a little bit of time talking to drivers themselves, talking to customers, understanding those different skills. That was something that Coyote did extremely. That was something I give my dad a lot of props for, is he used to make every single person. Bill Driegert had to book loads. Everybody had to book loads. And by learning those things, you were just so much more capable of understanding the whole business and what you can do, right?
I agree. We did the same. If you didn't matter what you did at Transfix, like you book load for a day. We did it at first. We did on your first day and realized, wait, that's too aggressive. You need to understand the business. So we did in 3 months in 24 hours. You're booking freight, and that is a great experience. But I think to go back on something you said. When I started this, I thought, this is going to be easy to automate, but I was very naive. This is probably the hardest space there is to automate. It took us over a decade to be where we are today on like our level of automations. And I agree that I'll give you a quick anecdote. Like our internal tool was called Stark after Tony Stark. And the reason
was that you? Are you a big Tony Stark fan?
I'm a weirdly obsessed with Marvel and all things Marvel from before the movie. So the movies have been amazing to me. But we called it Tony Stark.
I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, I have no
Why
shame.
not Jarvis?
I'll tell you. So it was Tony Stark because we weren't building Jarvis that was going to replace you. We were the builder of the suit, and we needed somebody in the suit. The goal was it has never been, we'll completely replace human, because we've always thought there's one thing that human, and I don't care about, like, even given AI, I still believe in this statement. Humans are great at relationship, and there's nothing that's going to replace this. And this business is driven by relationship. And so we always thought, we'll build you the suit so the suit can do 100 scheduling appointments when you could only do one without it. But you're going to be responsible for that relationship, so that you call the responsible at the warehouse and he hears your voice and he starts knowing you. And when there's I only have one spot left at 8 p.m. Hey, can I get it? Right. Robots aren't going to do that, and they're not going to get that. But automation will make it so that you're the first one there to ask. And that's why we called it Start.
So walk me then through the first couple of years of the business. Like what did that look like for the organization? Was it like super fast growth and hiring a lot of people like a traditional broker did?
Yeah.
At what points did the technology start to work in ways? Like just give me a frame of reference for just a visualization of what the business looked like over the first few years before you guys raised some cash.
Yeah, so we took exactly 1 year to raise capital. So for the first year, it was me and Drew. It was just Barnes & Noble, and it was just really the build. And 10 loads really taught us wait, I'm not ready yet. This is not gonna scale. I can barely survive by myself doing 10 loads a week while doing this. I was never a good carrier manager, to be very clear. Drew had to pick up the phone a lot to make some of those carrier calls. So anyway, so we grew, and then 1 year in, we grabbed the first fundraising, and we hired a few people. We hired somebody who was going to take over carrier managers. We hired an engineer, and we hired a designer. From there, the first year felt like very high growth, mostly because our customers were very, very large enterprise. Which, in hindsight, this is great that we got this done, but why would you give your freight to a company that has so few people and us? I mean, I'm grateful.
Selling the dream.
Yeah, I'm super grateful because it got us here. But so it felt crazy rapid growth because every account was a really large amount of freight. And so then we started the machine of hiring carrier manager, hiring operations. We've always had the model of not the what's it called? The model where you do everything versus it's split.
So a split model versus the
split model.
Cradle to grave.
Thank you. Yeah, cradle to grave. I was losing my words for a minute. So we've always had
you guys did
split model.
You had the split model. So you had people who were focused on the carriers, and you had people focused on the customers.
Yeah, they were mostly because of the way the automation was built. It was built in a way all right, you're doing scheduling, and we're gonna automate. We're gonna make your day so efficient. And we thought if you're cradle to grave, you have to now understand 20 different tools, and that never clicked in our head. Obviously, we've evolved, and we'll talk about what we're doing now that can fit everything. But at least while we were a broker, it was always a split model. And then we grew, and for 10 years, we added customers. We grew We grew a business, really, I mean, to a large brokerage business in the US. That was something we're really proud of. But to answer your question of like when the technology kicked in, I think it was really when COVID hit that we saw how well our tech worked, better than what we could have hoped for. Because what happened, COVID hit and we got worried. Like, we don't know where's the capital is going to come from. We're still burning money. Maybe all shippers are going to stop shipping. Who knows? And so we had to take the really hard decision to do a round of layoff to try to survive this phase, and like this unknown what is going to happen. And it turns out the opposite happened. And we had so much freight. We had more freight than we know what to do with. And the first instinct's like, oh, we're going to have to rehire. And then the tech actually kicked in. Tech kicked in ways that, wait, we still have bandwidth. And we're doing way more volume. And that really was the first, no, tech is working. Especially, it was interesting back then because where it worked really, really well was around pricing automation. Everything that we did in Spot that back then was already fully automated, and the tech started realizing, well, you can increase rate, you'll increase volume, you'll increase everything. These are all the bids we're going to make, and everything started working really incredibly in ways that was really, really automated and really fun to watch back then.
So I was going to ask, what specific functions of the operation were you able to automate? Like, when we're looking back at those, once it was kicked in, you mentioned pricing automation. What other features? And I do want to ask you a little bit more about pricing automation, but before we get into that, what were all the features or some of the features that you were able to automate and found that it was efficient and worked well?
If you think of the life cycle of a shipment, that's like, I like to think about it that way. That it goes in a flow, and it started with pricing, and we talked about it. We had Spot was, I think 98 or 99% fully automated. And contract was above 70% automated on RFPs. And then so from pricing, then you go into tendering, like accepting or rejecting the tenders. That was fully automated. Scheduling was at 70% automation. There's always we've always thought there's always that phone call you need to make at some point.
And with respect to scheduling, was it, because there's different functions within, or different, I don't know if you call them verticals, but different types of scheduling. I think that you have email scheduling where you're just emailing back and forth with someone at a warehouse. You have phone scheduling where you've got to call and talk to someone about the appointment you want. You've got portal, where whether it's E2 Open and you're going into their portal and doing it, or it's Retalix, Retail Link. What am I missing? Anything else?
There's one. Philippe is one.
Open Doc.
Open Doc. How did I forget that?
Which is a portal, right? That qualifies as a portal.
I guess it's just a portal. Yeah.
So which of those were you able to automate? I assume the phone call one you couldn't automate yet.
Yeah, this was pre all the AI stuff that we have today, and always thought I will need the relationship. So the remainder was this. Every other ones was automated. Email was automated. There was a lot that we send email, send them links, click here if you accept this. Like, we had a first tool that would tell us what is the optimal appointment time based on the shipment's criteria to get the best negotiation from a carrier. So we learned very early on the right appointments makes it for an easy negotiation. The wrong one really hurts. So we had tool deciding, okay, this is the optimal time, and then just email the facility, hey, click on this link to accept our appointments. But we had email and all the portals. Like, we love the portals. That was the easiest way. We had all of those automated. Whatever shipper had those enabled.
Okay. And with respect to scheduling, I cut you off after scheduling. Keep going.
So you get scheduling. Once you schedule, covering the shipments. So that for that we had either like We had a routing guide. We had a way for carriers to come. We had our own internal load boards. We had ways to automatically email carriers. We had ways to we had a lot of different ways. Our thesis, whether it's for shippers or carriers, was always we need to meet you where you are, not where we want you to be. And so if you're carrier ABC, you want to be emailed, we'll email you. You want to be called, we'll call you. You want to call us, we'll send you email so that you can call us. It was all set up to meet you where you are.
And the internal load board would be similar to was there like a Transfix app that any driver could download, and if any available load you had was on there, and they could just click. I assume there was like a buy it now or a book it now feature.
Yeah, there were
bid on it. How did that work?
So there was a book it now, and then there's a button where you could negotiate it, and then you would end up negotiating with a bot. This is really cool. But it wasn't by text message. It wasn't. You enter the number, you click the button, you see we're thinking about this rate, and then we get back to you. Is like, we counter at this rate. Do you like it, or you want to counter more? And then it would basically be an infinite loop until carrier accepts or denies.
And how did your bot know whether it was a good rate to accept or
it's a great question. So it was all done with like actual machine learning. This is like machine learning is a subset of AI. It's not looking at like, ooh, this is our target. This is part of like a lot of like what our offering today is. Our models were extremely good at understanding lead time. And so you're a broker, you absolutely know if I tell you pick up in 1 hour, the price is not the same if I tell you pick up tomorrow, regardless of the lane, regardless of anything. But what nobody is ever able to tell is like, at what point is the inflection point? At what point is it starting to get more expensive? And at what point, and by how much? It's a little bit of a gambling dilemma. My next hand is going to be better. Like my next hand is going to be better. And the bot would know, wait, the next hand is not going to be better. We're starting to get too close. And so it would adjust the rates. Like, so if we knew we wanted to hit 1,000, and that's what we thought the lane was going for, and that's what we thought our buying power would allow this lane to be at 1,000, and truck driver would coming or dispatcher would coming and say 1,100, the bot would understand why with plenty of time. I can get other offers. I can figure this out. Let's go 900. Or it'd say, you know what? I don't have time. If I don't pick this load now, I'm going to end up with way worse. How about 1,100? And even though it would actually bid above our target, it would always minimize the risk of us losing money.
How do you know it's minimizing it? Like, what do you have to compare it against if there's not an alternative world where it didn't offer 1,100, right?
Lots of A/B testing. Lots of games, lots of A/B testing.
Is it looking at historical lanes and saying, okay, 6 months ago, we, at 1 p.m. we offered 1,000 and we should have offered 1,300 because at 3 p.m. we paid 1,600 or something like that.
Yes.
And then it's doing the math on so many of those situations that it has gotten to. Is like that's how it works, or are there also other sources being pulled in to?
There's a couple of things. So you're right on the conceptually. That's how the machine learns it. But then live, it wasn't open to every single shipment. Lots of shipment was still covered by our team, so it was learning live. Right? It had that information live. Wait, like this broker just booked the truck on that same lane I just had for more money because like it's too late. And so it constantly ingests data. It's constantly like thinking. It's not thinking. It's a machine, but it's constantly doing the work, right?
Analyzing.
And then we get to analyze. Like, wait, it pulled that decision. Our rep did better. Our rep was able to get better. The machine was wrong. Let's tweak it. And we had 10 years of doing tweaking on this algorithm, and it powers the way we price. It powers the way we pull rate. It powers the way we negotiate with carriers. It was powering everything.
Okay, so we got pricing, we got execution with carriers. Keep
then
going.
we had so then we had compliance. Frankly, I'll give credit to the highway team here. Like, we used to do our own thing. They showed up. We're like, this is great. So we used highway.
Highway's great. Shout out Highway.
It was great. So
Free sponsor there. Free.
Yeah, you're welcome, guys. So
I'm gonna I should start charging them.
Yeah. So then, so carriers in, send in rate confirmation, doing all the paperwork. I mean, that I think today is fully automated. Back then it wasn't. We had to convince carrier it was okay to sign on a phone or sign on a website, but now it's like a table stake. And track and trace along the way. Interestingly enough, we've always had more success with our app than integrating with the LDs. We had all the LDs that you can think of, but we found that our app ended up being more accurate and give us more data than those ELDs, but it was fine either way. I feel like track and trace is almost a given today.
Is there alignment between, so if I look at Convoy's app and the driver kind of profile that they have publicly talked about, and I look at Uber's and some of the profile that I know they've talked about with their broker access, is it fair to compare that to a similar, were you guys very heavy with owner operators and small carriers then as well?
We I mean, small carrier, yes, but not owner. It's not that we would say no to an operator. They can work with us, but we found that our bread and like our better ICP, if you wish, for carriers were between the 5 and 20 trucks. We were really, our thesis was, we want to make sure, we want to reuse your capacity. We want your book of business to be 90% Transfix. And because we're giving you round trips, because we're giving you or not exactly round trip, but like triangles or like squares, you tell us like, hey, I want to be back in Chicago in 2 weeks. Cool. Take your truck for 2 weeks. That's what really was trying, and it's really, really, really hard to do with owner operators. Close to impossible. Well, we had to, yeah.
Well, I'm sorry. It feels like it would be easier, or maybe I'm missing something that you can clarify. But when I'm imagining an owner operator, he's got his phone, he wants a load, he opens the Transfix app or the Convoy app or the Uber app, and he books it, and then it's really easy for you to track him because it's in the phone and on his phone. But like if I'm a dispatcher and I'm booking the loads for my 10 drivers, how do you make sure that they're getting tracked on their phone?
So technically, yeah, that's a little bit easier. What's much harder is getting the right shipper that has the right freight concentration to give you those trips to begin with. And if we have, I don't know, 100 shipment going to Laredo, and 20 shipment picking up in Laredo that day, right? You cannot, it has to be the right location at the right time. But it's like you have a dart and you're shooting at a map of the US, and you have it has to be at this, like, pinging the map at this point in the map at this time on the map. At scale, then it becomes really hard. You have to grow your shipper base really aggressively if you want to do that with owner operator, versus the 5 to 20 truck have dispatchers. They have, okay, I know I'm going to have a truck empty here. I know you don't have shipment. So I'm going to find myself a shipment, and look, I found one. I'm now going to be in California in 2 days. Right. Okay. We can work with that. So it was in the tech that was difficult to scale at this point. It was making sure we had all that demand. And we found that it was much easier to do that with the 5 to 20 trucks companies.
So something that I don't think any broker that I know of has been able to manage super efficiently is getting the right freight from the right shippers to create the optimal network. And why that is partially because every shipper acts independently, and frankly, I don't want to say they don't care about the network you're trying to create, but especially for brokers, it's not exactly like they ask you for a wish list and plan to give it to you. I've definitely had shippers who care. I'm not trying to say they don't care. it's hard to make every broker happy, especially when they want to generally feed their assets first. And most brokers, there's certainly strengths that you develop because of the relationships you have, but there are also just lanes that are easier to move because there's more capacity on them, and most brokers are going to put those. So if I'm looking at an entire nation of entire nation of lanes that make up a network, and it's all dry van loads, and my options are to prioritize the loads that ship out of Florida going to Chicago, or the loads that ship from Chicago to Florida, 99% of brokers are going to pick the loads that ship from Florida going to Chicago because they're just easier to move and anybody can find capacity to move them. So if we all made that our wish list, shippers don't necessarily comply. But I'm curious, were you able to find a way to leverage technology to more effectively bring these networks together to say, okay, if we pair this with this and that with that, and then get shippers to give it to you?
So we have I want to say yes, like we did, it worked great, but practice, if I'm being honest, it required like some like shipper partners. They came with us, they looked at it. We had a few example of this, but it wasn't. We had a couple triangles that were really cool. But I don't want to give any location.
I appreciate the honesty. I didn't expect you to say you had a perfect answer there. I just was curious if there was something, because it's so hard because each shipper cares about their own network, and I'm sure they want their partners to have an efficient network, but it's hard to manage.
The tricky part, some shipper it worked really well. The other one is like, well, you're telling me that if this facility of this other guy takes too long, you're going to be late now, right? Like, I want you're like, I'm using a broker because I want you to have backups, because I want you to be able to grab another truck if you need to, so you can be on time. And that's what breaks the perfect like routes. It's time, it's efficiency at those warehouses. And I mean, it's trucking, things happen. There's an accident, there's a flat tire, there's whatever. And then that makes that trust. You're using a broker to make sure it gets picked up. And that's why that's always been hard.
So this is 2020 when all this technology is starting to click. Mm-hmm. At this point, the company is 7 years old. Mm-hmm. I think by now you've done a few raises. I think you did 22 million. I think I saw was a Series B in 16. Mm-hmm. There seems to be a connection. Well, I don't know if connection is the right word, but a theme with a few of the companies that have been bucketed in the digital freight broker camp. Mm-hmm. And you guys were bucketed in that camp for sure. Yeah. Where these companies built a lot of automation and technology for their organizations, and it was really good technology that definitely was better than what the traditional broker was operating with. But at the same time, the trade-off seemed to be that a lot of these companies struggled to build profitable, sustainable brokerages that could keep going. Yeah. Was that a part of the problem along the way?
So it's hard for me to tell what's their problem. I wish no one's harm, and I honestly wish, I feel I wish everybody succeeded at the end of the day. I'm much more prone to encourage people, like people are trying new stuff. So like, might as well go for it than bringing them down for trying. Right. But so I can talk about like what happened with us. And
yeah, no, that's what I was asking. Sorry. I wasn't asking about others. I was just asking if that was kind of a challenge you dealt with.
Yeah. And so for us specifically, what we thought was we want to build, like, if you just grab the broker should be profitable. The brokerage. If you remove the tech, the brokerage should be profitable. That was what we got there.
Is that,
I forgot what year.
Is that because you won't always have to pay, you won't always be carrying that much tech cost because you're not always having to keep building at such a
It was two philosophies. Yeah, it was two philosophies. The first one is like, I don't think for the tech we built over the year was really, really expensive in terms of like the engineering time that went into it, and thinking that you're going to be able to to make the whole company profitable using the brokerage margin is always something is like we thought we could make it happen if we really get there to $1 billion revenue. Like they were a path, but we knew it was always going to be hard. So we wanted the brokerage to be successful. The other side is it's a business, right? And if we couldn't make the brokerage profitable, then as an entity by itself, then why is the tech good for? If we can negotiate the right shipper rate, if you can negotiate the right carrier rate, what is the tech good for if you can't make money out of the brokerage? Plus, we've always thought, internally at least, we thought we delivered a little bit of a different experience to shippers and to carriers, right? Like it wasn't your the same sale. So we have a differentiated sale. We have a differentiated product. We hope you like the product. You think it's better, but we can't make money out of it. That would be bad business. So that's really like that was core focus since day one. Like the few times where we had negative margin shipments, it was all hand on deck. Why is it happening? What are we doing? Why do we make it to not have that happen again? It wasn't on purpose. It wasn't to grab wallet shares or we did it a couple times to get in with the customers. Sometime I feel like in this space you just have to.
We did that a few times. I mean, to clarify, it's not that you're like trying to lose money, but you want to make sure you get your foot in the door so that you can prove your capabilities, and your intent is to make money on the account. But sometimes the only way in is to give an attractive enough price to get an opportunity.
Yeah. So that's why we really went for it, right? We wanted to build a business. We wanted to prove that the tech was working, and the only way to do that for us was to have a successful brokerage by itself. And it puts us into a great position when fast forward we talked to NFI. It put us into a really interesting conversation.
So at what point did you become the CEO? You started as the CTO, and Drew at some point left the business and was replaced by Lily, and then
he stayed into the business, but he went more into our like a sales role. And Lily took over. Lily came in as our COO, and he was CEO. And then there's sort of like she moved into CEO. He moved into like heading sales. So we try to SPAC in between all of this.
I forgot about that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was fun. And
the timing was bad. The timing was really bad.
Awful timing. So the thing is, like, it takes
was right as SPACs blew up.
Yeah, it takes a. Sorry, go ahead. Ask your question.
Can you just explain how the SPACs work? Because we've not talked about that once on the show, so I think it would be helpful to kind of walk through that.
I'm no expert, but in layman's term, public company that is essentially just a shell. That has just nothing but money in it, acquires a private company, and now that private company becomes public. In layman terms, that's a little bit how it is, and it's a faster way to get to be a public company while raising capital at the same time. And it was like there's a big wave during that time, like 21, 22, there's a big wave of a lot of company going through SPAC. We look at all our numbers, lots of bankers told us like that was the right time, we should go. And it takes some time. It's not instant. You don't like say yes, and 2 weeks later, now you're public. So we did all the prep work. We did all the work, and then market turned very, very fast, and we had to make a decision: go out or stay. It was
when was this?
I want to say early 22, early 21. Okay. I'm losing track of time. I'm very bad with dates.
I think 22. So 22 was the year that everyone made a ton of money.
Yeah, so that must have been then.
23 is when
it's easy because I'm going.
21, 22.
It was 22.
Yeah.
We announced that we were not going public October 11, 2022. Google.
Yeah, I think it had started to turn because typically brokers make the most money as the market's on its way down.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So 2022, the market had started coming down. If you were a good broker that had a lot of contractual freight and had taken good care of your customers in the previous years when the market was doing the other stuff going up, then you probably kept your contracted rates at the elevated level they were. And the rates to the carrier were going down every day or every month, which meant there was a lot more profit going into the broker's hands at that point. But the market share was dissipating rather quickly.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened. And therefore, we had to make a really, really tough decision to not go public. And today, in hindsight, it's one of the best decisions we've ever made. We would have gone crushed. And we would not have been able to do a lot of the stuff that we did. But
can I ask why? What was the interest in going public versus raising traditionally with private equity?
It's a really nice way to get liquidity into the company, into giving money back to our shareholders, giving and more. And it was supposed to be a really nice exit for everyone. It was really a financial decision. Got it.
So market goes the other direction and you guys realize can't SPAC. Yeah. So what's the pivot plan?
Yeah, so
is that when you became CEO?
Yeah, 6 months after that or something like that. So Lily decided to step down, just because she decided to step down. I supported her decision, although I was sad, but supported her decision. And we talked about it as a board, and I just decided to put my hat in the ring. On them, I would like the position. Lily supported it. We did a nice transition where taught me a bunch of stuff, and that was it. I was CEO. Drew was also extremely supportive, and obviously he's still in the business.
That had to be really hard.
It was
if
fun.
I just put myself in the mental state of everybody, because I know of other companies that were trying to sell at the peak, and nobody knew it was the peak. They just happened to be near a deal. And I know a company that nearly got a deal done for $3 billion, and it all fell apart overnight. And all these people had these expectations that they were getting paid, and then no idea when. So you're kind of taking over as CEO. You're now going to be the face. You're now the man accountable for the business. And you probably have a team of people who are looking at you like, hey, man, okay, the SPAC's gone. The money that we were expecting is gone. Business is going down because it's going down for everybody. What was that like for you to step into the CEO role for your first time in these conditions?
I'll give you one even better. My very first week is when SVB crashed and we had all our money there. I was like, wait, are you going to say that my first payroll, I'm going to miss my first payroll? Is that a joke? So it went fine. Everything was fine. We worked it out with people, but trial by fire. But it's harsh. I think it's moving fast. It's a business I know, right? It wasn't like I was going into a new job, new business. I had, well, I hope it's weird to say it out loud, but I had the confidence of our internal team. I had the support of the board. I had the support of our investors. And one of them actually said, the good news is we're going to give you at least 1 year. So you get some time to mess things up before it gets better. That's nice.
What was your message to the team coming into that role? How big was the team at the time?
I want to say 250 people or 300, something like that.
And how much of that was probably engineers versus operations?
Engineers must have been at the time, give or take 100. Operation, give or take 100, and then sales, G&A, and all that stuff, another 100, give or take.
Okay, so 250 people now under your watch. What was your message to them as okay, the SPAC didn't work. We're not doing the SPAC. what's our plan moving forward? What was your message, and how did you navigate it?
Lily had the beauty of, had the gift of giving the message that we're not doing SPAC. So that was actually really quite annoying, because we weren't quite allowed to tell our team until we posted it in online, because it's all public matters, and you have to be careful what you say. So that was awful. That was making the decision and not saying it to people until you can do the proper press release and all that. That was the worst time possibly ever. It felt just shitty.
I hated when you had to keep things like that from your team, because we sold to a public company, so we couldn't. I was telling people that we were selling, but I was like, I can't tell you to whom and how, but like, we'll let you know as soon as we can tell you.
It's the worst. It's and they asked like, what's going on, and that was the worst. So anyway, so I didn't have to say we're not SPACing and all this. So I took over like about 6 months later, give or take, and the team was overly welcoming. So I just basically said, let's fucking go, and we went. Right? We knew. And yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say, at this point, were you already planning to pivot, or were we still going to be a really great broker that was driven by the best automated technology in the industry, and we could get to that $1 billion number and like full steam ahead?
Yeah, it was a little bit of a mixed message, because the thesis was whoever is going to survive this crisis is going to get all the freight when you're on the other side. You just have to survive. So it wasn't like, let's fully go. It's like, hey, how are we surviving? Let's think through that. That means like, it means a different mindset, different approach. Like we gotta like be like very, very cash conscious of like where we spend, very, very conscious what freight we get, when we get it, how we get it. Like, a lot more of a data-driven and conscious approach than a sell and like grow and do all this, and which I like looking at data. Like I'm okay at it. So it was a lot of doing that, which I liked a lot. So I was it was surprisingly not as daunting as one would think.
Yeah, so the message was less like grow. It was more like, let's batten down the hatches and let's keep the house in order.
Yeah,
and let's survive the storm. Yeah,
that was the message. And where we can be more gritty, let's go there. Where we can like be smarter, let's go there. That was the message, and we did that for about 6 months before like, it looks like we're pivoting. So, but at the time, I didn't know that was going to happen.
And what drove? Well, for one, nobody realized it was going to be the storm of the century that was going to last. I mean, arguably, maybe it's still ongoing. Depends who you ask. But I am curious. When was it? When did you decide to pivot, and what drove that decision?
So it was really an organic conversation with NFI. We were talking to the board. What are we doing? Right? Like we need to raise more money if we're gonna keep going with the same strategy. And what's the point? Where are we going? We had this like long meeting. I remember sometime over the summer. Before the summer, like April. And we're just thinking, like, what are we doing? Do we want to get more money? And just literally the goal of this round is stay steady. Like, don't grow, do nothing, just stay steady so like we can see it on the other side. Or do we do something different? And our board was extremely supportive. They knew our tech really well, and they're just like, it's too bad, the best asset we have, we can't really sell. And they kept pushing us like, can we sell it? Can we figure out how we sell it? So we started doing a little bit of like compliance tool and try to go sell it to broker. That didn't work.
So when you say sell it, you don't mean like get rid of it. You mean commercialize it?
Yeah, license it. Okay. And brokers won't buy tech from brokers. I don't want to open the Pandora's box and talk about Uber. But our strong thesis from back then, from today, broker is not going to give you going to give another broker their data. They shouldn't. They're not going to, and they're not going to buy tech from competition. I think that's crazy.
You're like, I'm not going to open the Pandora's box, but let me make all the arguments against why that doesn't work. We don't have to open the box.
Real quick. Anyway, we can. I'm sure we can have a whole episode on that too.
I agree with you. But it's interesting because you look at your brokerage and you probably have great people and feel good about your customers, but it's not that differentiated from other brokerages. And then you look at tech that you've built that, is strong and there's a lot of automation features that you don't think other brokerages have. And you're like, well, this is the differentiator. How do we get this to market? And the answer is we have to get rid of the brokerage.
Yeah. And frankly, I didn't quite see it. In my mind, it's like, maybe we sell the whole company and they can decide what to do. I wasn't sure. And I had a dinner with, a setup dinner with Dave Browering.
Jeffersonian dinner, as Dave called it.
Exactly, that dinner. And Dave was talking about how he has this view of how TMS are all wrong and what they should be doing. I mean, that's what we do. We do that. That's how we do it. And literally, after the dinner, we hung out for 5 minutes. Talked, and we just sort of came to the conclusion you should buy our brokerage. I should buy your brokerage. And I thought he was messing with me. I thought he was absolutely messing with me. But he's like, no, I can only meet at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. Can you meet me? Yeah, sure. It was at 6 a.m. He was ready to go. We talked for an hour. And they moved. I have nothing bad to say about the NFI team. Those deals can be grueling and you can't see the other side anymore, but I have nothing. This was great. It was really, really interesting process.
Couple thoughts. One, this will be my 42, 43, maybe the 45th episode I've done. Dave is maybe the easiest person to talk to. And also one of the most energetic. He's got a great energy to him. But it's cool that I heard the others. I've had him on the show and he kind of told the other side of this story. I just want to call that out. But the other thing I'm curious about is talk to me about the due diligence process. How long was it?
It was 4 or 5 weeks. They went super fast. His team knows how to buy brokerage. They've done it many times. They're like, this is what we're looking for. This is what we're doing. Dave and his CTO did a walkthrough of the tech. They liked it. I mean, knock on wood, I think they liked it given where we are. Deal happened really, really seamlessly.
And how hard was it? So this is interesting because I'm recording this just this morning. This episode will come out in 2 weeks, but I'm recording this the same morning. I just recorded my making of a merger episode with 2 companies that are merging that are announcing what will be about 2 weeks from prior to this being live, but they also had their due diligence process only be 4 to 5 weeks. And it's crazy to me to hear that for now 2 of these deals like that. And one of the reasons that they said they were able to go so quickly is because these guys had experience, public company experience, and their data room. They already had all the audited financials needed. Did you guys have all of that prepared, or did you guys have to kind of go crazy getting everything ready and into a data room for the team?
We just almost SPAC'd not that long ago. So we had everything in order. We had everything more buttoned up than they should be for the company we were. And the finance team that we had and that we have, everyone is extremely, extremely qualified to do this, right? NFI knows what they're doing. They knew exactly what question to ask. They knew exactly. And on our side, everything was buttoned up as we just went through like a process of way harder than this was. So it just perfect timing.
That makes sense. So NFI buys the brokerage operations and agrees to license the technology as your first customer, or how did that all work?
They license the whole thing, right? Because they bought the people, all of our brokers and all that stuff, and the customer and the carriers that came with it. So they bought that part of the business. That today, and from the day of the acquisition, and today, and probably for the future, is powered by all of our tech. So they're licensing that part.
And is that white labeled then for them? So like, is there now an NFI app that their carriers log on to book loads, or it's still the Transfix app?
It's still our Transfix app. It's still our Transfix app. You just see the NFI loads in there.
And so where does that leave the Transfix and your team moving forward? How many people are on the team, and what is the new vision for the company and what you're building?
So now we're down to about 50, give or take. And it's funny. So we came out, I'll take a step back in order to answer the question. Like we came out of this, and we had so many different tools and product. And we thought, okay, well, if we come out and say we have a TMS, the sales cycle is going to take years. It's just going to take a very, very long time. We're trying to convince you who have you broker ABC, who is starting to invest into your own team to build your own TMS, or you've had MacLeod for 10 years. We're trying to tell you, oh, you should, who are we to do that? So we thought, fine, we're not going to do that. We're going to have modules, and each of these modules is going to be connected to your TMS, and it's completely our automation around tendering, accept or rejecting shipments. We'll have an API so that you can stay in your TMS, and we'll automate that for you, or pricing, or all of these stuff. And we came out and we started pitching all of these different solutions. And there's one thing that was very clear in this current market: people aren't as focused on automation if it doesn't make them more money, because they have bandwidth, because they have people. They're not looking to for automation, they're looking for increase, and best way to do that is pricing. It's price better, and we realized quickly we priced at Transfix very differently than anybody else, because it was done by machine learning models, it was done by data scientists, but also by brokers. And our data science team book load. They talk to drivers. They understand what it takes to negotiate. They hash it out every week with our brokerage team. The model was wrong here. The model was right here. The model 6 months ago predicted this rate, and now it's this rate. What happened? So we have a unique, experienced data science team that has built these models, and now are to give you one quick example of what I mean by it's very different. A lot of the brokers we're talking to are trying to understand where the market is going. With all due respect, that actually it matters to some extent, but not really. If what's more important is to understand that, hey, when it's a tight market, you buy 150% above the market, and then you need to understand the market. It's more important to understand what your cost is going to be than what the market is going to be. And we base all our decision based on our cost, not the market.
And how can you know? History doesn't repeat necessarily. I get that it rhymes, is the saying, or whatever the saying is, but historically, when the market tightens on Chicago to Dallas, this is a made-up example, the rate goes up by 150% for you. This time, it might go up by 200. So, how can you have the level of confidence that you do in the pricing, given that, I don't know, the future is yet to be told? So, does that sound weird to say it like that?
No, but they're the easy answer is a really, really complex data science behind this. I'll give you some results before I go into the how a little bit, and there's a couple reasons why we can be this accurate compared to the rest of the market. There's two ways to understand how a model works and their accuracy. And I'm just going to speak in super high level terms because just to make sure we have the time. Otherwise, I can talk about this for hours. But you've got like your MPEs and your MAPE. The MPE is sort of like the average error. You take all your errors, you average them out. That's your percent of errors. The MAPE, you can think of it as like the highest volatility, the worst case scenario, like when it's bad, like how bad does it get? We had a model that we put in December of 2023 that priced every single month of 2024. And in October, our MPE was negative 1%, meaning like we were as an average under by 1%, and our MAPE is 8%. In the worst case scenario, when we thought a shipment was going to be $1,000, it ended up being $1,080. Like those results just don't lie. And there's a lot of reason why we can get that level of granularity. And the first one usually stems from geography, on how people see the world versus how truck drivers sees the world and where capacity comes from. A simple example is Boston to Houston versus Springfield to Houston. If I'm telling you this, you're telling me it's the same capacity. Capacity comes from the same spot. They're 40 miles apart, 50 miles apart. Like, you're going to grab capacity from that same area. In every single tool out there, they're going to be different markets. There's a different zip, different cities, different everything. And so once you can understand geography differently, and you can understand where capacity comes from, regardless of where the pickup is, and understand that like they're going to a great freight market or a terrible freight market, or understand all the idiosyncrasies of a lane, of a shippers, of a warehouse, of all this, and you realize that like the market is only a small factor to what comes into that rate. And when you can do that, and then just all of the features that comes into our model, you end up with fairly accurate rate. Now, if there's another COVID, that will be interesting. We'll have to react and we'll have to figure it out. But outside of a global pandemic, those models are a little bit scary accurate.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. So how would you fill in the blank in this sentence? Today, Transfix is a blank company.
Pricing solutions company. We'll take care of everything pricing related. If you want automated spot, if you want RFPs, like we'll come in, we'll ingest your data, we'll be an extension of your data science team. It will feel like we're part of your team. Because our model is going to be your model. There's only going to be one of those. It's going to be unique to you because it's going to understand how you react when there's a short lead time. How is your team structured? How is your carrier network? What is your shipper network? How good are you at scheduling appointments? All of that is going to go into the model. It's going to end up being your model. It's going to be your baby. We're just going to help it grow. That was weird. That was a weird analogy. I get
no, I think it sounded good.
I heard it.
Your model, your baby, we're going to help it grow. That could be a commercial.
I don't like it. Maybe my marketing team is going to listen to this like, oh no, what did he say?
I thought it sounded good.
Nice.
Okay, so pricing solutions, pricing automation solutions. And will this be marketed strictly to brokers, to assets as well? Does it make sense for an asset carrier to use this for pricing their own business?
We're probably going to try one day, just not today. It is a different business. Shippers, on the other hand, is a lot more interesting. We're targeting some large shippers that like are doing RFPs and helping them understand what is the cost of their network. What happened if the real interesting question for a shipper is, you find this you manage to negotiate with this broker and beat him down. Great. And now it's 6 months in, we're going to tell you they're going to ask for a reprice. They just are. Like, this is where this line is going. This is where the market is going. They're going to ask you for a reprice, and this is the reprice they're going to ask for. This is how we worked with shippers. So, like in the when we saw that the rates were going up, right? We often came in before the RFP. We would try to get a meeting before the RFP season. We would run the network from the previous RFP. The RFPs don't change that much. They change a little bit, but year over year, they don't change that much. So we take the previous year, would show you, hey, here's the rate. If we price at where we should be to not renegotiate with you for the whole year, we're not going to be competitive. We're not going to win any freight because everybody's going to bid right here. So we're going to bid right here with everybody so that we can win the freight. And if we're wrong, you don't have to pay for it. But if we're right, in 6 months, we won't be the first to come renegotiate, but we won't be the last. And this is what we're going to ask. And that conversation usually went really, really well. And that's so that we can offer that now for the shippers on the other side.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. Do you see any risk or conflict in trying to cater to both shippers and brokers, or they being concerned there, or anything of the like?
I don't think so. We do it purely on your data, right? So like, even if we do it on two brokers for the exact same lane, they're going to be very different price because it's how good are you at servicing that lane?
Is there no sense in offering to aggregate the data and offer to the brokers like, hey, there's 50 of you in the pool. If you guys want to contribute, you get better. Theoretically, did you get better pricing at that point, or more accurate, or does that not make sense?
No, we actually, so we have a partnership with both DAT and Sonar to get an understanding of the market. They already do the aggregations. They have a lot more data than we can aggregate with 50 shippers. And so no, like when you work with us, your data is your data. We don't mingle it. And the problem what happens when you mingle this data and then you get an index, and then I have to understand how you price against that index. Well, your data influence that index quite a bit. Like, unless I have significant, unless you have a lot of data, when you distill down to lane level, 50 broker, they're not going to be that much, right? And so it's going to be highly influenced. So like the model is going to show back to like, oh yeah, you're buying at the market, because my vision of the market is your data anyway. So we're not looking to do that.
I'm curious. You said that you have partnerships with DAT and Sonar, because I initially, my guess would have been that this is a competitive product to those tools. And
both of these tools are there to tell you what the market is. But we still need to have an understanding of what the market is. We just don't want to build that understanding for ourselves by doing what you just said and like aggregated all those indexes together, all those data points to create an index together. We believe that whether you like it or not, like we can debate that another time, but carriers look at the DAP, carriers look at Sonar. That is going to influence your negotiation. You have to know what those tools say, because it's going to influence the negotiation. You're going to hear on the phone from a dispatcher, well, I see that at 1,200. You're going to hear that. But if our tool doesn't reflect an understanding of that, it's not going to work.
And I'm curious, I mean, are you guys in the, market cycle prediction game these days? Like, can you tell me when the market's going to, is the freight recession over? Do you feel like you have a confident ability to answer that question?
As much as I have, I don't see into the futures. However, in December 2023, when I told you we ran that model, we also ran it to understand, like, hey, go as far as out in the future as you can and tell us when the market turns. That model said June, July 2025. Today, I still believe that's accurate. But I think the definition of market turning might be
I was going to
different.
ask you for your definition.
Yeah, so it might be a little bit different. I don't think we've had pre-COVID, the cycles were long and steady, right? Going up, then going down, but they were long and steady, and they weren't like crazy, like spike the way like I think the combination of COVID and tech has made the cycle go much shorter, much faster. Now, coming in 25, I think that what I mean by market turning is that less trucking companies will be running at rates that they can't run at forever. The market will finally stabilize in ways that truck drivers won't lose money driving, which frankly is it's heartbreaking in the first place. So that to me is what I mean by market turning. I think today you're seeing signs of it starting to happen because some rates are getting inflating. And that could be a result of a lot of macro factors that again is another Pandora's box. Like who knows what's happening with tariff and all this stuff. Right? We'll see what happened if the spike today is like going to stick. I'm not sure. But what I hope is that by June, July 25, you get stabilities on the supply side. And that should drive the rest.
Can you give me an understanding? Only time will tell. Give me an idea of what you think the future of brokerage looks like. In as a guy who's an engineer at heart and who understands this tech at a level that I think most of my audience probably is not there, myself included. How do you see the role of AI coming into the space and, evolving or influencing brokerage? What big changes do you see potentially happening? Give me your kind of perspective there.
If you asked me this a week ago, I'd tell you AI is just a fad and it's not going to go very far. And my grandfather always said only idiots don't change their mind. And I had a test done on me with a bot calling me and negotiating as if I was a truck driver, dispatcher, negotiating with me a rate, and that bot was good. That bot was real good. And so now I have all my billings shaken up a little bit. I think there's a huge discrepancy where the market should be and wants to be and the tech they use today. And that makes it really hard to understand where everything is going. You got one side of the market talking about AI bots that are calling with incredibly complicated tech and things like that. And on the other side, you've got broker and shipper using EDI. Just EDI was invented in the 60s, I think. I think cassette tape, which I'm not sure a lot of people will know what that is these days, were invented after EDI. So that's the tech that is used today, and we're talking about where is AI going to take us. So I hope that EDI stop existing very soon for the sake of everybody. But it makes it hard to know where are people going to invest and where they're not going to invest when their TMS can't plug in to all this new tech. And when it requires the providers of this new tech to figure out how to integrate with those TMS, that makes innovation very challenging. Right.
Yeah, but I think the old school TMSs are in trouble. The ones that, the on-prem AS400 type green screen, that stuff is, I wouldn't want to be someone messing around in that world today.
Yeah. I totally agree. And so where it's going, I hope it's going to a place where AI can keep empowering people, can keep frankly bringing a more stable lifetime to carriers. I don't know. I tend to be very focused on the carriers because I have immense empathy for what they do. immense empathy. It's by far the hard, like out of all of our jobs within supply chain, I don't think there's two. There's another one that compares into how difficult that is. And so I hope at least they'll be focused on helping them out. But that's a naive hope, and I'm not sure I'm right.
I guess we'll see. What do you think the future looks like for Transfix?
I don't know exactly how long we're talking about, because these pricing solutions, I think we're going to be selling them for quite a bit. Our thesis has always been we have all these tools. They're still available. They're basically built. And so if we get in with pricing, when are we evolving? Like, I think there'll be an evolution towards bringing our carrier app into this world, and then bringing our automation to this world. And I don't know when it is, but it's not because we've pivoted that our aspirations have gone down by any means. I still very much intend to try to make an impact, to get people lives in our industry better in one way or another, to have a mark. That's what Drew and I set up to do, right? We want to change the way this industry works, and this is just a different path towards it. Obviously for the better. Yeah.
Final question. What's the most valuable lesson you've learned in your 10 years in freight?
I should have, I've listened to enough of your podcast to know you were going to ask that. Yet
I don't know if I ask that all the time. This one, it just kind of naturally flowed into that.
Lesson. I don't know if it's a lesson. There's just people doing right by people, by your team, is probably the number one thing that matters. Because when you need them to be here, and they are, there's nothing better. There's nothing that is going to help a company grow better. There's nothing that is going to be the people on your team, and making sure you're here for them so that they're here for you is something, right? I didn't say anything earth-shattering, but there's a difference between knowing it and just feeling it through the ups and the down of that a company can have. That to me is this probably the feeling versus the knowing.
Well said. We're going to end with that. So, to our listeners, I hope you enjoyed the Transfix story, Jonathan's story, and his role in building this business, helping it pivot and become a whole new thing. And that's all we got. We'll see you next week.